Good afternoon, everybody, and namaste. When you think of Buddhism, you might have the tendency to picture followers with shaved heads living in complete solidarity and isolation from the outside world. In fact, I had a very established image of Buddhism before I visited the Indianapolis Zen Center off Washington Street near Butler's campus. What I actually experienced was very enlightening, and although it did include some elements I presumed would be a part of the service, there were also some unexpected subtleties to the Indian Zen Center. That being said, today I'm going to be talking about Zen Buddhism and my experience at the Indianapolis Zen Center, along with all the details associated with these. First, I'll start by giving a short explanation of Zen Buddhism to prep everyone for the rest of my discussion. Next, I'll try to explain the center itself, as well as the many people who affect or are affected by its existence. And finally, I'll describe the personal account of my visit to a typical practice at the Indy Zen Center, while also showing some of the rituals I took part in. So, to begin, Zen Buddhism is a school of Mahayana Buddhism developed in the 6th century, but it's so much more than that. As those of the Indy Zen Center described it to me, Zen is very simple. What are you? In this whole world, everyone searches for happiness outside, but nobody understands their true inner self. And Zen Buddhism emphasizes personal enlightenment, and the very word itself comes from the Sanskrit word meaning absorption or meditative state. The people I spoke with continued to tell me, everybody says I want this, I'm like that, but nobody truly understands this I. They asked me, before you were born, where did this I come from? When you die, where will this I go? Sooner or later, this thinking will run out, and this is considered don't know. And aha! Zen is keeping this don't know mind always and everywhere. Furthermore, meditation in Zen means keeping this don't know mind when practicing the various aspects of Zen Buddhism, chanting, sitting, which I participated in. Next, this particular center is located off Washington Street, 5 minutes from Butler's campus in Indy. Their center is classified under the Kwan School of Zen and is based off of Korean Zen Buddhism. This particular school is an international organization of over 100 centers and groups founded by the Zen Master. The Zen Master for the Indy Zen Center is Song San, and he was actually the first Korean Zen Master to live and teach in the West. At the young age of 22, he became a Zen Master practicing Korean Buddhism. What is highly interesting, at least to me, is that he encouraged people of all faiths to practice and realize their true nature together. This is highly indicative of the nature of Buddhism itself, given its development as a Protestant religion against Hinduism, renouncing castes. And at the Indy Zen Center, their purpose is to make this practice of Zen Buddhism available to an ever-growing number of students throughout the world. And the heart of the Kwan School of Zen is the daily practice that goes on in its centers and the groups like the one I visited in Indianapolis. Students and visitors eat together, work together, and meditate together, gradually attaining a clear, compassionate mind which, moment to moment, is able to help other people. And this is something that students I talked to held as highly important: togetherness. Despite the goal of Zen Buddhism towards personal enlightenment, the students treasured working towards this goal as a group. They engage in retreats, group meals, group projects, and cleaning of the establishment, all to help each other achieve their own personal enlightenment. At this particular Zen Center, there are not an overwhelming amount of students, from what I was told, only a handful or more to be exact. But what I found to be particularly interesting was the varying degree of commitment from student to student. While some are considered teachers who have their own specific requirements, many others are students by night and average civilians by day. Although this would probably be obvious, I didn't have the cursory knowledge of world religions going into this experience. In order to explain this fully, I think it's probably better to draw a comparison to Christianity given its United States popularity. Much in the same way Christians go to church on Sunday, these students practice on various days of the week. They begin each day with their bows, chanting, which I'll do later, sitting, which I'll also do later, and do the same most nights and weekends. A Christian might start their day with a morning prayer, and a Zen Buddhist would start his or hers with bows, chanting, and meditation. I suppose what I didn't realize was that a varying degree of commitment like this existed within Zen Buddhism. I assumed that it was extremely devout, as were the majority of its members. The room in which they bow, meditate, and chant has various prayer flags hung up on the walls and sculptures of the Buddha. But for the most part, it's mostly plain. From what I was told, other sects of Buddhism, Tibetan, from the particular example I was given, have a myriad of colorful prayer flags and otherwise vibrant displays on the walls of their practice. Zen Buddhism, on the other hand, is very plain, and the Indy Zen Center was consistent with this explanation. Aside from the few sculptures and prayer flags, like I said, the walls were a neutral color, as was the rest of the establishment. In the back center, sort of when you walk in and take a left, you'd look, and there was a wall. There was a Quan Som Basal. Apologize for my pronunciation right now. This is also known as an Avalokitesvara in Sanskrit, I think, and is the Bodhisattva of compassion. Before entry into the room, one must put their hands like this near their face and standing bow as a sign of reverence towards the Buddha. Now, even though Zen Buddhism may seem like something that could be practiced in private, given its emphasis on personal enlightenment, there are opportunities for both private and public practice. Meditation is done with the inner eye and mind, but it can be done in the presence of others. Also, the chanting is done in succession with the other students to help facilitate inner meditation, but in a different way. This type of inward contemplation, while in a group, once again helps explain Buddhism as a whole. It's representative of the duality continually espoused throughout Buddhism. However, this is not to say that these students are not conscious of their role within Indianapolis and the United States, as opposed to their specific Indianapolis Zen Center. In talking with students at the Indy Zen Center, I was able to learn their rationale for joining and how they thought they fit into society. Mainly, they said that becoming students of Zen Buddhism helped them fit into society even better. It instilled focus, compassion, respect, and patience. One student even told me that he enjoyed doing yard work and other chores now that he is able to completely dedicate himself to a task. I'm sure he must be well on his path to studying Zen Buddhism, because I really can't relate to fully enjoying yard work or those sort of things, but I took his word for it. Another student told me that being a student of Zen Buddhism helped him interact with others in society. He was able to understand the perspective and problems clouding the judgment of others, so that he was better able to facilitate discussion and interact with these people. So the positive outcomes from Buddhism are the same reasons people joined in the first place, according to the people I talked to. They chose Buddhism because it focuses on cultivating oneself and looking inward in a society focused on outward vanity. The Indy Zen Center's numbers have been growing from what they told me, and the Zen teacher discussed why he thought this was. In a world cluttered with small pleasures like money, cars, sex, people are beginning to want more meaningful pleasures, namely personal enlightenment. And as a result, Zen centers like the one in Indy are popping up across the country and are becoming increasingly popular and talked about in the public discourse. So finally, I'll describe my experience at the Indianapolis Zen Center. It was pouring rain this particular day as I scurried up to the door of this unassuming structure. It was kind of hard to find because of how unassuming it was. And when I stepped in, I noticed how plain the place was inside. Neutral colors, not much furniture, so I could tell this was most likely the theme. I was nervous, and once I entered, the Zen teacher who greeted me with his hands pressed together in front of his face welcomed me like that. I was nervous not to do anything offensive, but the problem was I didn't even know what would be offensive. For instance, when I walked in, I didn't know whether I should extend my hand and shake hands, because I know that's considered to be extremely Western in nature, so I actually just kept my hands at my side and let him make the first move. So as he told me to enter the main room after I did this, the main room of practice, he told me it was customary to bow standing with my hands in front of my face like this to show reverence towards the Buddha. Once I entered, I sat on a mat with a small cushion with my legs crossed and underneath myself, and I was handed a chanting booklet. So basically how I was sitting, if you excuse me for a sec, I was just sitting just like this, and you have your hands right here on top of one another. You just keep them like this throughout the duration until they tell you to obviously do some different things when it comes about, but that's how I initially started. Like I said, once I entered, I sat on a mat with a small cushion with my legs crossed underneath myself, and like I said, I was handed the chanting booklet. One student then hit a noisemaker several times, and the Zen teacher, the head person, basically began chanting. From what I was told afterwards, the noisemaker was to keep pace and rhythm throughout the chanting and meditation, basically as somewhere to keep your mind focused on every once in a while so it doesn't drift off. Soon we were all chanting in Korean, since this is where the Indie Zen Center assumes its origin. The chants in the booklet were phonetic pronunciations of Korean words in English, so everyone could participate. They sounded like this. Forgive my poor performance skills, please. But here goes. So, Kanji Zaibo Saigyo Jin Hanya Hara Mitaji. Thank you. And while doing this, we would engage in full body bow. They're kind of like bow salutations of sorts. That's how I could best describe them, and they looked like this. So you'd start standing. So you'd start standing like this. You'd have your hands here. Then you'd get down on your mat, get on your knees like this, and just have your hands. You'd have your hands right here, extended upward, and you'd put your head on the ground like this. Then you would get up like this. Sorry the camera works so bad. You'd get up like this and sort of on your knees and hands. Keep your head down. Then you'd get up right here, stand up, and basically we did that for... we only did that a few times. We went through 4 different chants, and I was told actually when they do the Sunday morning practices, they do that 108 times in a row. So I could see that would probably get difficult, which speaks towards the discipline aspect of Buddhism and Zen Buddhism. We did a few chants with the same actions. Then we turned towards the wall, folded our legs underneath, and began 30 minutes of mindful meditation. So, like I showed earlier, basically it's that same pose. I'll just do it again. So, you'd sit like this. The eyes are half closed, looking 3 feet in front, 3 feet in front of you. And as I was told, I was supposed to just breathe normally. Not necessarily deep breaths, but just focus on your breathing normally and follow your mind. I asked him afterward, to elaborate on like the following your mind thing, but basically what he said is, in contemporary society, we're just surrounded by all these distractions. You've got your television, radio, and to be able to just sit there and focus on the I, like I talked about earlier, for 30 minutes and just let your mind calm down and rest in this one particular place. That was just supposed to facilitate the meditation and the mindfulness associated with it. So like I said, sitting like this 30 minutes, he told me before it started actually that if I got uncomfortable, instead of like moving around, shifting around, and disturbing the other people that were there, you're supposed to just stand up from your mat, and you can't see me right now, but just stand up from your mat and have your hands pressed in front of your face as to not disturb the other students. And I was thinking, 30 minutes, that's not that big of a deal. I'm a young kid. These people who were here were older than I was. I thought, I'd be fine sitting like this. Turns out after about 10 minutes, both my hips and knees sort of hurt like he knew they would. So I stood up and stood for a couple minutes, got back down, and then finished up in the same position. So he was extremely courteous, and he understood that I was a novice, so he took that into account when he was explaining everything. So after the 30 minutes was up, we finished with what is called a Dharma talk. So one of the students read from a book the Zen master published, Dropping Ashes on the Buddha, while we all listened. I actually have a copy of the one he read right here. So this was an excerpt from what he read. It's called The Human Route. Coming empty-handed, going empty-handed, that is human. When you are born, where do you come from? When you die, where do you go? Life is like a floating cloud which appears. Death is like a floating cloud which disappears. The floating cloud itself originally does not exist. Life and death, coming and going, are also like that, but there is one thing which always remains clear. It is pure and clear, not depending on life and death. Then what is the one pure and clear thing? So as you can see, to some people, this might even be frustrating to listen to something like this because it's kind of convoluted. It doesn't really have like a, here's the problem, here's the solution. It's sort of just to facilitate, once again, like everything is, mindfulness, meditation, thinking about the I, the grander things, like what's most important. So after this service was over, I was free to leave. All in all, I'm extremely grateful for my experience. The Indianapolis Zen Center was extremely welcoming and calmed all nerves I had going in. I learned about Zen Buddhism, their role in society, and the particular practices at this establishment. The meditation itself was very calming, and I see myself continuing this specific aspect in my own special way going forward. Maybe not the 30 minutes sitting like that, but at least taking some time to, put your mind at rest, remove distractions, and kind of, hone in the I, if you will. So to conclude, I began with a brief overview of Zen Buddhism. Next, I described the Indianapolis Zen Center and the details surrounding its existence. I also discussed my interactions with students as they helped me learn throughout the process. Finally, I gave a first-hand account of my practice at the center. All of this enlightened me to the nature of Buddhism, specifically Zen Buddhism. I learned that the students are just like myself, and in an attempt to be more mindful going forward, I've decided that I want to be more like them. So thank you for listening, and namaste.